familiar with us and joining for the first time, Slashdata is a market research firm active in the technology community for nearly 20 years. We serve the technology community helping companies make data backed, high impact decisions with confidence. We help you understand your customers, your users, and your decision makers and understand how to do everything from product design to marketing strategies with data. We will continue this series throughout the year, so do stay tuned and join our newsletter to get invited to the next ones. For housekeeping, before I hand off to our featured speakers, we will be open for questions. The live chat that you should see in the right of your screen is available, and we will be reading through that at the end of the presentation. We have two senior analysts here with us today, and that is Bleona Bitzai and Alvaro Ruiz. He will address, and the group will address, the most topical subject we are dealing with, all of us, and learning about more and more each day. It's AI in tech, usage, adoption, and challenges. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to Alvaro. Alvaro?
Yeah, hello everyone and welcome again. I'm Alvaro from the research team at Slashdata, and today in this first half of the webinar, we will explore how developers are working with AI and integrating it into their applications. Here's a quick overview of what we'll cover. First, we'll look at how developers are actually working with ML and AI, whether that's using AI tools in development workflows, adding AI functionality to applications, or building AI models. Next, focusing on the second group, so those adding AI functionality to applications, we'll explore the types of models they're using and do a deep dive on open and open source models to understand why developers choose to use them and the challenges they face. Finally, we'll look at the type of AI functionality that developers are adding to their apps, so generative versus non-generative, and see how the proportion of developers adding Gen AI functionality to their apps varies based on experience, region, and company size. According to our data from the 27th edition of our Developer Nation survey, which was fielded in Q3 2024, about 2/3 of developers are already using AI tools in their development workflows. The most common use case is AI chatbots for answers to coding questions, with 46% of developers doing this, followed by 32% using AI-assisted development tools like GitHub Copilot, and another 21% use AI to generate creative assets for their projects, for example, 3D models. When it comes to adding AI functionality directly to applications, 21% of developers are doing so, 15% through fully managed AI services or APIs, and 10% using self-managed or local models. Finally, 15% of developers are involved in creating AI models themselves, whether that's customizing models with their own data, building and training models, or fine-tuning hyperparameters. This leaves us with only about a quarter of developers that aren't working with AI at all yet, highlighting just how integrated AI has become in software development. For the rest of this presentation, we will focus on this group here, so those adding AI functionality to their applications, and then in the next presentation, Bleona will share some insights on the first group, so those using AI tools in development workflows. Now, let's take a closer look at how developers are bringing AI into their applications. Here, we can see the types of AI models that developers use. So, of the 21% of developers who, as we saw earlier, are adding AI functionality to their applications, 66% indicate that they do so using open or open source AI models, which corresponds to around 6.3 million developers. As these are by far the most popular types of AI models, we're now going to explore developers' experience using them. However, before doing that, it is worth noting that while the majority of these developers, so 58% within this 66%, rely on open source models exclusively, a substantial proportion, the other 42%, also report using in-house or proprietary models in their applications. Now, moving on to the use cases, modern AI models are opening up a world of possibilities, and we see this reflected in the wide range of use cases that developers are targeting with open and open source AI models. To get a clearer picture, we asked developers what kinds of features they're actually building into their applications using these models. And here is what we found. Text generation leads the way, with 37% of developers using open or open source AI for this purpose. Right behind are conversational interfaces, such as chatbots, at 36%, and text summarization at 34%. This is no surprise as natural language processing powers so many of today's most useful AI features, from creating content to streamlining customer support. But the story doesn't end there. Developers are also tapping into predictive analytics at 30% and personalization or recommendation systems at 29%, showing how open and open source AI is also being used to anticipate user needs and tailor experiences. Image generation is equally popular at 29%, reflecting the growing demand for creative and visual AI tools. And as you can see, many other functionalities have substantial developer adoption, highlighting how developers are leveraging open and open source AI models across a diverse set of use cases and how AI is shaping the next generation of smart applications. Now, let's explore the reasons why developers use open or open source models. At the top of the list, ease of integration with other tools, customization flexibility, and a strong belief in the open source model each resonate with 34% of developers. This shows that developers want models that fit seamlessly into their existing workflows, but they also value the ability to adapt and shape these tools to their unique needs. And also, many are genuinely passionate about the open source approach itself. Community support is another major factor, cited by 33% of respondents, which is also closely connected to the belief in the open source philosophy, where developers can tap into shared knowledge, get help quickly, and contribute improvements back to the community. No licensing costs at 26%, and transparency of model behavior at 25% are also key. With open source models, developers gain visibility into how models work, which is critical for building trust, ensuring compliance, and addressing ethical or security concerns. The rest of the reasons, all cited by less than one quarter of developers, include the suitability of the algorithms, alignment with organizational values, and avoiding vendor lock-in. However, while powering all of these functionalities, using AI models can also pose a wide array of challenges. To better understand this in the context of open and open source models, we asked developers to select up to three main challenges they face when using them in their applications. As it turns out, 86% of developers using these models are facing at least one of these challenges. Since AI-powered applications rely on data one way or another, developers who build them must ensure that the AI models do not compromise the privacy of their users or create security vulnerabilities in their systems. This is reflected in our data, with security and privacy concerns ranking first on the list of challenges that developers face when using open or open source AI models in their applications, at 25%. Having challenges finding the right model for the job is also highly prominent, at 23%. According to our data, this issue is significantly above average in importance among those adding conversational interfaces to their applications, where this jumps to 29%. So this use case clearly generates additional complexity for the AI models to deal with, as models may not be always meeting the nuanced needs of conversational AI. Other notable hurdles include ensuring accuracy at 21%, or the lack of specialized support and difficulties with fine-tuning or customizing models, both at 19%. Many developers also point to limited training resources, gaps in knowledge or skills, and compatibility issues with other tools, at 18%. To complement these findings, we also asked their counterparts why they avoid using open and open source models when building AI-powered applications. Overall, as you can see, we observe broad similarities between the top reasons for avoiding these models and the challenges when incorporating them. However, we also see that 19% of those who add AI functionality to their applications without using open or open source models do so simply because managed services are more convenient. Interestingly, 25% of these developers avoid using open or open source models in their applications due to security and privacy concerns. While this does not mean that open and open source models are inherently not secure, Community driven models might not offer the same guarantees as proprietary solutions. Now, moving on to the last part of the presentation, let's see the type of AI functionality that developers are adding to their apps and explore some quick profiling of those integrated Gen AI into their projects. First of all, you can see here that according to this data, 25% of developers are adding AI functionality to their applications, either generative or non-generative. If you remember, at the beginning of the presentation in the big chart where we distinguish between three groups of developers, we said that 21% were doing so. But that was data from Q3 2024, where this is fresh data from Q1 2025. So this shows that the integration of AI into applications is growing at a fast pace, rising 4 percentage points in a matter of months. Now, distinguishing by the type of AI functionality added to applications, we see that 20% of all developers are adding generative AI, whereas only 11% are adding non-generative AI. So things like analyzing, predicting, or classifying existing data. Looking at experience, it turns out that those who are just starting out in software development are the least likely to build applications powered by Gen AI. In fact, only about 1 in 10 developers with less than a year of experience have added Gen AI features to their projects. This makes sense as early career developers are often focused on mastering the basics and tend to work on simpler projects. So diving into advanced AI integrations isn't usually their first step. Now, if we look at developers with a bit more experience, specifically those with 3 to 10 years under their belt, we see a big jump in adoption. Developers in the 6 to 10-year range are leading the way, with 26% incorporating generative AI into their applications, closely followed by those with 3 to 5 years of experience at 23%. These mid-career developers are often at the heart of innovation within their teams, as they've built up enough expertise to tackle complex projects and are often trusted to experiment with new technologies like Gen AI in this case. Interestingly, there's a noticeable drop-off among developers with over 10 years of experience, with only 17% reporting that they are adding Gen AI to their applications. For many senior developers, the focus tends to shift towards overseeing projects, refining established workflows, and mentoring others, rather than hands-on experimentation with the latest tools. So it seems like the sweet spot for Gen AI adoption seems to be among developers who have moved beyond the basics, but are still actively building and innovating. As one might expect, the use of Gen AI in applications varies significantly across geographic regions. North America leads with 27% of developers integrating Gen AI into their applications. This reflects a dense concentration of tech companies, substantial venture capital funding, and sophisticated technology ecosystems of the region. On the other end of the spectrum, Eastern Europe and South America at 11 at 12% show the lowest integration rates. While these adoption rates are low, this observation aligns with what we find in broader research, where these developers are the least likely to adopt emerging technologies in general. And several factors may be contributing to this disparity, such as weaker local infrastructure, fewer available resources, or economic conditions limiting access to cutting edge technologies. Now, focusing only on professional developers, we see that the size of the company they're working for has a big influence in Gen AI integration. Freelancers and developers at very small companies are the least likely to add these features to their applications, with just 13 and 16% doing so, respectively. Limited resources and infrastructure are likely the key barriers here. Interestingly, the highest adoption rate is among developers at mid-sized companies, where 29% are integrating Gen AI into their apps. These organizations seem to have the right balance for innovation, as they have enough resources and expertise, but are still agile enough to quickly embrace new technologies. At large enterprises, adoption drops to 24%, showing that even with more resources, these companies often move more cautiously, facing challenges like complex legacy systems and stricter regulations, which can slow down the integration of new technologies. Furthermore, developers at large companies are more likely to be focused on specific tasks than at smaller companies, where developers may wear many hats or contribute to multiple areas. So only specific teams might be in charge of integrating Gen AI into the projects in these large enterprises. So this is all for today. If you have any questions, we'll address them at the end of the webinar in the Q&A session. And now I'll hand it over to Leona to cover how developers and also non-developers are leveraging AI in their day-to-day.
Thank you, Alvaro. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so hi everyone again. I'm Leona and I'm also part of the research team here at Slashdata. So now that Alvaro has walked us through the builder side of AI-enabled apps, let's switch to the people who use them. I'll open with a quick snapshot of how developers themselves are working with AI-assisted coding tools, but the figures that I'm about to show are not from the most recent datasets, so think of them as a baseline rather than the final word. We will soon be collecting fresh numbers, and we'll share those as soon as they're in, so consider this as a teaser of the trends that we'll be updating very soon. And of course, please feel free to let us know if there's something that you're interested in exploring in addition to this, because we run surveys frequently. So, according to our data, 32% of developers are already coding with AI-assisted development tools such as GitHub Copilot, Deep Code, or Sorcery. Now, looking into experience levels, we see that those who are new to software development are the least likely to use AI tools to assist them with their development work. More specifically, we see that only 22% of those with less than a year of experience report using these tools. But that's not surprising because when you're still learning the basics and you're working on small projects, you're extra cautious about suggestions that you might not yet know how to debug. But usage rises quickly through the early career phases, and we see that by the 6 year mark, it reaches 37%, as productivity starts to matter more than practice. After that, it levels off and even dips for veterans with 16 plus years of experience at 28%. Again, long timers may be pickier about new tooling or spend more of their day on tasks like architecture reviews, mentoring, that don't benefit as much from code generation assistance. And turning to how developers use these tools, one use case clearly dominates, and that is code generation, reported by 55% of AI tool users. We also see that the more seasoned the developer, the stronger the uptake. So, among those with 16 plus years of experience, 75% rely on AI to generate code, which is roughly double the share of newcomers with under a year in the field at 37%. And this shows that code generation can be particularly useful for developers, with functionalities ranging from suggesting simple code snippets to even more extensive use cases. Developers' motivations are just as telling. When asked for their top 3 reasons to adopt AI tools, 51% mentioned an increase in productivity, a priority that we also see growing with seniority, as seniors are more likely to work on large scale projects and they have more responsibilities than those who are at the beginning stage of their careers. And related drivers such as automating time-consuming tasks or automating repetitive tasks, they both follow the same pattern, resonating most with experienced professionals. As I said, this is only a snapshot of the landscape, and we are gathering fresh data as we speak, so we will share updated figures as soon as they are available. But now I want to move to from the engineers to the decision makers who also benefit from AI. Earlier this year, January to be exact, we interviewed 10 leaders in large tech companies, 5 in the United States and 5 in Europe, all heading marketing or sales teams. We deliberately kept the scope to these 2 functions so we could see how Gen AI is reshaping work outside the purely technical realms that we're used to working with. For marketing and sales, Gen AI's promise is pretty clear. It can amplify human effort and turn routine processes into faster and more targeted operations. Over the past few years, these teams have started using Gen AI for tasks such as content creation, customer support, and lead generation, but they're also learning where the technology still falls short, and they shared all of this with us. In our conversation, among other questions, we asked them, why did you introduce Gen AI into your workflow? Which tasks does it tackle today? What benefits are you seeing? And also, what challenges or what risks keep you cautious? These insights they shared give us a well-rounded view of Gen AI's impact on marketing and sales, as well as the opportunities and the limitations. So we began by asking when Gen AI first entered the picture for sales and marketing teams and what actually triggered that move. Across our interviews, interest spiked as soon as the wider industry started hyping up AI's promise. So early adopters launched pilot projects 2 to 3 years ago, aiming to streamline workflows, to deepen their customer engagement, and generally extract better insights from data. One sales strategy manager put it plainly: Gen AI became a topic in our organization ever since OpenAI came into existence and the world started talking about it. However, other firms moved more recently, potentially encouraged by a new generation of easier and more capable tools. Whatever the timing, we can see a very clear pattern. What began as a small scale experiment has now shifted to the strategic core of many organizations. And for most of these organizations, Gen AI is no longer just an optional R&D, but it is a priority for staying competitive in this rapidly evolving digital market. Across every interview, three motives came up again and again for using Gen AI: greater efficiency, relief from repetitive work, and sharper decision making. Sales teams turn to AI for lead qualification, for customer segmentation, and personalized outreach, tasks that once soaked up hours but now convert faster with far less manual effort. Marketing teams use Gen AI to generate blogs, social posts, and email campaigns at scale, while also keeping tone and quality consistent, which is very important for marketing firms in particular. Most organizations began with small, low risk pilots, so trialing tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Copilot before committing at an enterprise level. As one sales enablement manager told us, 1 or 2 years ago, we started playing around with Copilot to author materials both internally and externally within a very small group. Based on our input, we decided to implement a pilot throughout the company. So this start small and then scale approach was pretty common. Launching Gen AI in one team, learning fast, and only then extending it across the organization. When we asked where Gen AI shows up in day-to-day work, three main buckets emerged. So we have certain use cases for sales, for marketing, but also certain use cases that cover both of these areas. Sales first, teams are using Gen AI to really zero in on high potential leads, to automate initial outreach and tailor follow-up messages. It's also helping with crunching historical data for sharper forecasting, and it takes all of those routine chores like drafting sales briefs, updating the CRM off the table, so sales representatives can really spend more time building relationships and closing deals with clients. Marketing tells a similar story. Gen AI now drafts blog posts, social copy, and even image edits in minutes while keeping brand tone intact. Marketers feed Gen AI campaign data to really fine tune and personalize their messages, and they lean on it for quick turn visuals such as infographics or short videos. Some tasks, however, cut across both functions. AI tools record and summarize client calls, they draft email replies, and they generally serve as an idea sparring partner during planning sessions. By offloading these repetitive jobs, sales and marketing teams alike can really redirect their time toward more higher value strategies and creativity and just general high level conversations. Now, Gen AI is proving to be a genuine workflow changer. Across all of our interviews, sales and marketing leaders highlighted four recurring payoffs: speed, personalization, cost control, and sharper decisions. And I'll walk you through each of these. Starting from time saved. So AI tools now are summarizing reports, they're drafting sales briefs, and generally clearing away low value admin work in minutes rather than hours. One sales manager summed it up pretty well. Something that used to take 2 hours now takes 20 minutes. Yes, there are accuracy issues, but for many tasks, AI dramatically improves efficiency. So the result is more calendar space for strategy, creativity, and client conversations. Then hyper personalized content. So by crunching customer data on the fly, GenAI tailors ads, emails, and pitch decks to smaller segments but at volume. A marketing manager told us, with more and more use, AI is starting to learn the tone of our brand and how we communicate to our audience. Now I barely need to tweak anything. Apart from this, sales teams see the same advantage, targeted messages that land better and convert faster. Then we have cost savings. So a major upside of Gen AI is straightforward savings. Marketing leaders told us that they are trimming agency fees, especially when it comes to media planning and creative production, because AI now builds assets and places ads in real time. One head of marketing put it simply: we've cut down on agency costs significantly because AI allows us to automate creative production and ad placements in real time. So sales teams also see a similar impact. AI automates lead generation, it keeps the CRM up to date, and sharpens forecasts, therefore reducing manual effort and freeing budget for higher value activities. Better, faster decision making. So Gen AI does not only automate, but it also improves the quality of choices. AI driven analytics pull insights from live data rather than just pulling from last quarter's reports, so strategy adjusts in real time. And just as important, automated transcripts and summary notes capture meetings, customer calls, and performance reviews verbatim. AI removes corporate amnesia, is what one head of marketing told us. It records exactly what was said, reducing confusion and ensuring clarity in decision making. So, by reducing human error and preserving a reliable record, Gen AI supports compliance and gives leaders a solid and a data driven foundation for their next move. Adoption is no longer the question, scaling is. So most of the companies that we spoke with have Gen AI running in at least one part of the business, yet rolling it out to new use cases is proving tricky. And the obstacles that they face after the pilot stage tend to be the same ones that really slow this wider expansion. Trust sits at the top of that list. Gen AI still hallucinates, so it occasionally produces confident sounding but wrong answers. And in data driven functions that depend on accuracy, employees really are hesitating to act on or even to vet AI output. A director of sales operations told us that AI generates outputs that sound highly convincing but aren't always factually correct. The challenge is that someone trusts this information without verifying it. And here's where training the staff comes into question. Security and privacy come a close second. Many firms handle sensitive or proprietary data, and sending that information to an external AI service, you can imagine it raises the specter of leaks, third party access, and compliance breaches. So, the result: some organizations limit AI use to low risk tasks, while others are even building in house models or imposing strict governance frameworks so they can keep tighter control while they scale. A sales enablement manager said that we handle a lot of sensitive data. We can't afford to upload proprietary information into an external AI system without understanding how the data is secured. So we can sense that there's still hesitation. A third roadblock is simply know how. Some employees readily experiment with Gen AI, while others hesitate because they don't trust the output or aren't sure how to get value from these tools. And without a formal upskilling program, adoption stalls. So people don't really feel confident enough to use AI in their day to day work. By contrast, companies that invested early in structured training saw faster uptake and a smoother transition. A marketing expert said there is still a large portion that are not adopting or not wanting to adopt. I think it's more about lack of education and confidence in being able to do it correctly. So I would think that training probably needs to be conducted across the organization. And even with skills in place, standardization also remains a hurdle because in many firms, one team is racing ahead with AI while another sticks to more familiar and manual workflows. The lack of clear company wide guidelines, so when to use AI, how to validate its output, who signs off, keeps adoption uneven and overall dilutes the impact of AI. An advanced analytics manager said right now there are certain staff members who are pushing for these types of tools, yet there are certain staff members who just don't care about it at all. It's currently not impacting our roles as much, but when AI catches up to a point where our roles are impacted, then we need to reevaluate training. And there's a consensus across all interviews that the staff members who are more hesitant to adopt AI are usually the senior or more experienced staff. Looking ahead, most leaders see Gen AI as an augmenter and not really replacing roles. So its value lies in speeding routine work, enlightening administrative load, and even sharpening decisions, while humans still supply the context, the judgment, and ethics. So adoption will widen into more business functions, but human oversight will stay central to keep outputs accurate and responsible. And this came across all of the interviews. Customer facing roles, especially in sales, illustrate this point. AI can qualify leads and it can send automated follow ups at scale, yet complex negotiations and relationship building with clients still call for human intuition. In other words, AI will handle the high volume and the lower value touch points, but people will still own the moments that matter. A global alliance lead from sales team said that I could see a world where maybe smaller deals will have an AI rep selling to small clients, but for now, sales reps are still necessary. So, according to them, we haven't reached the point of replacement. Accuracy remains a top priority as well. Teams are refining models with better training data, with tighter validation loops, and this human in the loop approach, which is taming hallucinations and building trust in AI generated insights. But beyond the tech itself, companies must really re engineer their workflows and they must focus on upskilling their staff so people and AI can work side by side. Organizations that invest now in training and also thoughtful integration, they will capture the biggest gains, and those that don't risk stalled adoption and even employee pushback. In short, Gen AI's future is as a productivity multiplier and a strategic ally, provided businesses strike the right balance between automated efficiency and uniquely human strengths such as creativity and critical thinking and relationship management. A head of marketing said, AI isn't going away, it's only going to become more embedded in how we work. The key is making sure we use it responsibly and strategically. So, as I said, working alongside AI and not just simply letting it replace us. Now, let me wrap up with 5 key takeaways from everything we've heard. So, from trial to strategy. 2 years ago, Gen AI was an experiment in side projects, but while today it sits on the board agenda. So, this shift from pilot to priority happened faster than any technology that we've ever tracked. Sales and marketing, so fastest wins, sales and marketing feel the impact first. So leads qualified, emails and campaigns drafted often 6 times faster, as we saw, while agency spend drops because a lot of that creative work now happens in house. Trust and security still bite. So every AI output still needs a human eye. And when, especially when sensitive data is involved, many firms choose private or on-premise models to keep information locked down. Skills gap is the choke point. So the tech scales only as fast as people skills. So without structured training, adoption will stall. So investing in upskilling is critical to stay up to date. And future equals augmentation. So Gen AI will keep taking the high volume, low judgment tasks, but complex decisions and accountability will stay within humans. So that combination is where the real value lies. So these are the headline lessons that we learned from the call report. So please feel free to share any questions now. I believe we're in the Q&A now. And thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Pleona. Thank you, Alvaro, as well. Um, I do have a few questions. One from the audience, so I'm gonna read that one, and then I have my own that I really would like to address as well. So from Liam, from your perspective, do you think? Oh, and this is addressed to Alvaro, by the way. From your perspective, do you think that finding the right model for the job will remain consistent? There you go. At about a fifth of the people's avoidance reasons or reduce over time. So, is that going to be a good reason for people to avoid um, AI introduction, let's say?
Yeah, well, that is a good question, but it's also a tough one because I think it could go either way. So, with the open source AI ecosystem changing and growing at such a fast pace, there are hundreds of models, architectures, and fine-tuned variants, which can make it really hard for developers, especially those with less experience, to identify the ones that best fit their use cases. So if this keeps growing like this, it might even be harder to find the right model. But on the other hand, as the ecosystem matures, we might see more user-friendly platforms, model suits, and even automated model selection tools emerge. And this could actually help developers filter, benchmark, and compare models more easily. So yeah, I think that it is likely that the proportion of developers citing this as a barrier will decrease, but I definitely think that it would not disappear or vanish entirely, especially among less experienced developers or those in highly specialized domains.
Thank you so much, Alvaro, for your perspective on that. I'm going to move to a question to Bleona. So it was interesting because you said that AI isn't necessarily replacing people in your view, only augmenting their work. But you did also say that it's 6 times. I think you said productivity gains are up to 6 times. Um, if that is true, can you explain that and say how that doesn't effectively reduce the need for additional staff?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question because I also wondered that while we were doing the interviews. But what I got from the interviews, especially, is that this AI six-fold productivity boost applies mainly to the mechanical slice of a task. So, drafting boilerplate code, first pass copy, or summarizing meetings. So, instead of making whole roles redundant, it really frees people. It gives them time to tackle the backlog of more higher value work, as I keep mentioning. So that always exceeds the capacity, like shipping more features, localizing campaigns, improving quality, or just more strategy based conversations. So, because these higher order activities still require human judgment, which I agree with as well, brand nuance and also accountability. So, the fact that we must review AI output for accuracy and bias, organizations reorganize that reclaim time rather than cut headcount. And in effect, AI removes the busy work, but not the brain work. So it lets each person create more value while also remaining central to decision making and quality control. And that's been the case up until now, I must emphasize, because we see that AI is moving and growing pretty quickly. So until now, that's the consensus across the interviews.
Yeah, and I think we could validate that, and I can validate some of that insight with my experience as well. Like, you still need to have um, sort of senior folks reviewing what the outputs are. You can't just accept it. So I can see that. I can understand where you're coming from. Um, Jumping back to Alvaro, you mentioned use cases, and I wanted to come back to that. Developers, so are developers specializing in one or two, or are they integrating multiple functionalities into their applications? So, what are the in terms of use cases?
Yeah. So what we observe is that developers are working with several of these use cases. For instance, according to the data, developers using open or open source models use on average 3.8 out of the 14 functionalities that we had in the list.
Thank you. So, indeed, and then a last. I think this will be my last question. Hold on, let me check if we have any more. Impressive. No. Oh, some nice comments come from the audience, but no, I have one more, and then we can end, and I won't keep all you longer. Sorry, I'm also fighting a cold and hay season. All right. So, among the companies that are invested in structured AI training, okay, and this is for you, Bleona. Do you know what training formats are delivering the quickest results and the quickest adoption gain? I think this is top of mind for a lot of us leading teams.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, companies are using several ways to train their staff, with a majority just having guidelines drafted. But from what I've concluded through the interviews, that's not really a good practice. As a standalone, it's not a very good practice, because the companies that really saw the fastest adoption internally um, are pairing brief self-paced learning modules, so that is to cover the UI basics, with live hands-on workshops where employees are really practicing on their own real tasks. So it's very practical. And then they're reinforcing that learning through monthly micro sessions and collaborations with coworkers, with this last part also being the most important. Because then people first gain just enough knowledge on their own schedule, then they immediately apply it in a safe instructor led setting, but then also have an internal champion network, so the group of coworkers that can unblock day-to-day questions. So firms that really relied on only guidelines or relied only on video online courses reported that this method was not as effective as using this blended approach.
That's really helpful, actually, and something to think about on my side. Anyway, thank you all for joining in the audience. Thank you, Alvaro and Leona. We are looking forward to the next session, which I think will be with one of our partners who we've published something for the community, and that will be really exciting. So we'll give you an announcement on that in the next newsletter, and do stay tuned. And if you want us to dig into any topics, whether for technical audiences or other, what other aligns with the tech space, do let us know. And we'll be really excited to take that on as well. All right. Thank you, both of you. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.